Lucy, thank you again for a great introduction. And this is Kevin Pruitt with Rising Tide Startups. And my special guest today is Thom King. Thom, thanks for joining us on Rising Tide.
Kevin, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on during these interesting times.
Interesting, Thom. He's already started off with the classic understatement. So, yeah, Thom, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, I mean, I can go way back. I mean, I was born in Wisconsin. My parents moved to Colorado. My dad bought some land and had a ranch, and so I basically grew up in the country on a small ranch with cattle and ducks and chickens and stuff like that. And then I moved from Colorado to Arizona, and in Arizona I got into the broadcast industry. And I moved from Arizona to California, where I got into the entertainment industry. And that's when I lived in California is when I started getting interested in food. And at that point, I'd been introduced to a small green leaf that actually turned out to be a stevia leaf. And
Thanks for
I was
clarifying that.
and I was
You're from
really
California.
yeah, and I was really amazed. It was like, wow, this is super sweet. And that was the trajectory of me starting a food ingredient company and then a line of products. And that this small leaf was 25 times sweeter than sugar, but didn't have any calories or carbs. So that kind of brought me down back down the path of, hey, what can I do with this? How can I extract those sweet constituents from the leaf? And found a way to do it. And flash forward 8 long years, the FDA finally approved it as a food ingredient. And we were able to build a pretty decent sized business out of it and employ some people and change a few lives.
So tell me let's drill down just for a second there on kind of the FDA approval. What was the holdup? Why did it take so long? Because it seems like a simple, it's a leaf. I mean, is it the fact that it was not tested? There was no track record. I mean, no one had ever tried it before. What took it so long other than just bureaucracy?
Well, I would say definitely bureaucracy was the main thing, but also the FDA is sort of a different branch of our government. They can be moved pretty easily by lobbyists,
Mm,
and it wasn't us that was able to persuade the FDA to allow it to be used as a food ingredient. It was a company called Cargill, which is a multi-billion
yeah,
dollar
absolutely.
food ingredient company who controls, a big percentage of the worldwide corn crop. So they have influence in deep pockets, and they were able to persuade the FDA to approve it. And it wasn't approved through the typical method, which is you apply, or you write letters to the FDA asking for GRAS status, and GRAS is GRAS, and it represents generally regarded as safe.
Mm,
So an ingredient or a compound has to have GRAS status and be generally regarded as safe before it can be used as a food ingredient, and sold as anything but a dietary supplement.
okay.
So
Which has
it
less
does
restriction that dietary
uh,
supplement may.
dietary supplements has a lot less restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think hopefully the supplement industry is getting better, but I've read a couple different studies that 75% of all the supplements that are sold on the market today do have some sort of adulteration or are not to spec what's on the nutritional facts panel. So
Right. Right.
the supplement industry isn't as regulated as the food industry.
Mm-hmm.
So so to get a GRAS status really paved the way to for us, to, I guess, ride the long tail of Cargill, into the sweetener industry. So, while they're a big company, we're a smaller company, and we were able to take advantage of what they did.
Did you also have to compete against like the counter lobby of like the sugar industry or the counter lobby of those that would not want to see this approved as a sugar substitute?
Yes, absolutely. And it wasn't so much the sugar industry. It was the nutraceutical industry, or, like companies that, that hold the intellectual property for NutraSweet, which is aspartame. And
Right,
at the time, I think at the time that we were working on trying to get GRAS status, Donald Rumsfeld actually was working with a company, I think it was Mersant, who had the intellectual property rights to aspartame. And then, I think at the time Johnson and Johnson had the intellectual property rights for sucralose, which is the sweet constituent that you would find in Splenda.
right.
Those companies were, I would say, more fierce about making sure that, that stevia didn't get a GRAS status. But um, I think persistence paid off. And now stevia does enjoy GRAS status, so you can use stevia in food, beverage manufacturing. And it makes for a product that's, I think, natural, clean, works for people.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way you kind of framed that about, it's not necessarily the sugar manufacturers, it's the sugar
Right.
substitute manufacturers that would have more
Yeah.
of an issue with you coming in that market. But so
Yeah.
walk us through kind of the business transition. You touched on it just briefly about the
Hmm.
idea of, I kind of discovered this green leaf and then I've been
Hmm.
chasing this dream for 8 years or whatever. And often, even people we've interviewed before on the
Hmm.
podcast that are maybe in this space, they probably were in the space not because they just happened to discover a green leaf one day, but they
Hmm.
were working on maybe personal health issues or something,
Hmm.
and they discovered, wow, this really works, and now I'm going to actually do it, make a business out of the things I found out that I was doing personally. But
Hmm.
yours was almost a little backwards from what I remember on like listening to another podcast, that you were kind of in this space and then you kind of got healthy after the fact. Is that a fair picture? Or
I would say yes, it is a fair picture. I was a sugar addict. So, in my college days, I would take a can of Coke and drink some of it out, and then empty a pack of M&Ms into it. And because it wasn't quite sweet enough for me and didn't quite have enough sugar. So, I
wow, that's
did,
hardcore.
yeah, I was way hardcore about my sugar consumption. Um, so by consuming that much sugar, a lot of, I was constantly fighting weight, going up and down, and uh, eh, other sort of health issues. And just wasn't my best self, I guess. Um, and when I discovered stevia, I was just enamored with it, because I thought this could be kind of interesting, way for me to tame my sweet tooth. So, for those selfish reasons, I'm like super interested in it at the time. It's like, wow, this is really cool. And so, what came up for me, because I'm a fifth generation entrepreneur, is how can I solve a solution, or create a solution with stevia. And at that point, I saw that there was a really interesting pathway, where I could launch a consumer brand, selling into health food stores and Whole Foods and whatnot. I could start there, and then my end game was to actually, take that consumer brand equity that I built at retail and then parlay that into an ingredient company. So that really worked out for us, because we had, some of the early adopters, like some of the companies that we supplied in the beginning, found us at health food stores and found us on shelves, and then contacted us and asked us, hey, can you sell us, a truckload? And so it really did work, from us starting consumer brand and then just moving solidly into an ingredient company.
So the 8 years that it took to kind of get, the kind of the grass status.
Mhm.
So I mean, you weren't just parked for 8 years. So walk us through that process of how you stay afloat when you're waiting on, you started this with the idea, you probably raised some capital in the early stages. I mean,
Yeah.
how did you, or what were you doing in the interim when you were just kind of waiting on this to be approved?
I was working. So
I was
this
at
was my side.
Walmart. I was stocking shelves.
This was my side hustle. Um, and it was my side hustle and probably until probably 2004 when things really started to take hold. 2008 is when stevia had gained GRAS status.
Mhm.
So in that interim, this was my side hustle. So during the week, I was a regional vice president for a company called Clear Channel, and then
Yeah.
every penny that I made was going back into building the company, which was then called Steviva Brands. So, yeah, like during the week, I'd just work my regular job, and then on weekends, I'd go to stores and do store demos, and we started an online newsletter before online newsletters were cool, and built a really solid direct to consumer and business. And then we were able to push people into retail stores. So this was all done nights and weekends while I had a regular job.
So when it's interesting, the name of the company, it's
Hmm.
so close to stevia.
Hmm.
So matter of fact, I had to read that about 4 or 5 different times. I'm thinking
Right.
I'm like I'm dyslexic or something because this looks like Steviva or something like that. So
Yeah.
it's like, do you think they misprinted this on the brand? So tell me the story behind that name, like being so close, but yet not the exact same, or I guess was stevia already taken, or
Um, it, I wanted to create a brand that people could associate back to stevia. And so Steviva just felt like a fun, lively name for the company. So, but what I can tell you though is that turned out to be a double-edged sword for us because I envisioned that stevia was just going to be that's what we sell. This is what we're going to do. We're going to be the stevia kings. And really what happened is that we leaned more into creating sweetening systems. Like we were using erythritol, which is alcohol sugar, and mixing it with stevia. And then we got into monk fruit, and then we got into allulose, and then we got into a variety of different sweetening systems and blends that were functional. So I mean, while the consumer side is still called Steviva Brands, we got pigeonholed into stevia because
yeah.
everybody is like, where are you going to go for stevia? We're going to go to Steviva. And when we tell people, well, we're one of the biggest suppliers of erythritol on a global basis, they would they they would be shocked by it. It's like, oh, we didn't know that. We thought we did that. All we did was stevia. So that's when about 4 years ago we did a study on how we would position ourselves in the marketplace and changed our name to IconFoods.
Okay.
Uh, so
All right.
which really is more, I would say, more in alignment
Hmm.
with what our company philosophy is, like being a symbol of excellence and quality. I mean, quality and doing third party diagnostics on all of our products and testing for heavy metals. And so even our color scheme, which used to be heavy in greens and leaves and stuff, changed to like red, white, and blue.
Okay.
Just real solid power colors. And we
Right.
moved from really positioning ourselves as a all natural company or a natural company to a company that focuses on purely quality, like the
Mm.
highest quality ingredients. And that's really worked for us. And within that framework, we also put together like a customer service sort of strategy, and
Right.
that was all about providing concierge service, like being first class. And that's the thing that we really push through all of our sales reps and any people that have any contact with customers at all, is that when we want them to walk away the feeling like this was an amazing experience from beginning to end. because we have competitors,
Hmm.
and then when we have competitors, when we have customers say, hey, I can get this product for 10 cents a kilogram cheaper, that's when we can say, well, do you enjoy their service? Do you enjoy, doing business with them? Do they get you the right documentations? Or the shipping, and is their shipping on time? And then, we can extrapolate that to, is that worth $300 extra a month
Right.
to you?
Yeah.
And if they're spending $1 million a year with us, that's usually a pretty silly question. They're like, well, of course it's worth that. And that's like, well, you know,
Why are we having this conversation? That's
yeah, let's go ahead and move forward with some purchase orders, and just put this in our past.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that, because I was trying to like fit Icon Foods and
Mm,
Steviva together in kind of what the, the layered approach. What's the umbrella company? What's the mothership? What's the satellite? That type of thing. But
right.
I mean, I just love the idea behind this. Just really kind of the concierge service that you look to. I mean, I think of brands like Chick-fil-A, that it,
Mhm.
it is so important, that they serve well, in
Mhm.
their fast food restaurants or whatever. And it's just,
Yeah.
that is the extra. I mean, they're not the cheapest fast food out there,
Right.
but yet they, year on year, they're ranked the highest quality, service brand, out there. So it's just really interesting to see that, you've taken a similar approach. And I mean, I really applaud you in that, because
Oh, well, thank
you
you.
don't have to compete necessarily as much on price, because you are
Right.
delivering such high quality service. But um, drill down a little bit on the kind of how Gone Keto fits in that family as well. And is that more of a like a personal brand that just kind of grew out of your personal experience under this umbrella, or is this completely separate? Kind of tie these together.
That's my new side hustle.
Okay.
So
You are a fifth generation entrepreneur. The gears are always turning.
they are. And so I would say that there was a series of events that happened about 5 years ago. Like, I was carrying about 35 pounds of extra weight. Blood pressure was through the roof, stress was through the roof. And you know most of the companies that we supply products to are either in low carb or ketogenic. And I felt a little bit like an imposter, because
Hmm.
while I was like dealing with a lot of these companies and selling to them, products for their keto and low carb, I was drinking a bottle of wine and eating a pizza at night, and carrying a little extra weight and just not being very healthy. And it wasn't. I would say that the tipping point for me, and I guess you'd even call it the bottoming out point, was when I was in Vegas for a trade show, and one of our vendors took me out to dinner. And it was kind of like, it was Vegas, it was no holds barred. Like, it's like, let's have some wine, let's have steaks and potatoes. And I mean, I just really overate, and had a couple glasses of wine and a piece of cake. And I got up to my room at the Luxor, and the room just reeked of booze and broken dreams, and and regret. And so the timing was perfect, because I just looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, whoa, this is not the person that I want to be. I don't want to be carrying this extra weight, and I don't want to be in brain fog all the time. And
Hmm.
and it's like, I'm just better than this. And at that point in time, I just sort of associated every bad thing with my eating habits. Like, is that donut, what's that donut going to do for me? Like, what's that slice of pizza going to do? And so, I mean, I really associated pain with that pleasure that I was getting. And I just did it to such a level that the pain of eating garbage like that exceeded the pleasure that I was deriving from it. And while I was going through that experience, right, I started writing it down, because I mean, I'm a freak about journaling. I mean, I never miss it. It's one of those things that I just do every day. So I just started journaling about my process. I started journaling about, some of the struggles, some of the things that I would say some of the modalities I leveraged to get more discipline. And after a year, I had a book. And so I had some friends hook me up with a publisher, and got the book out. And part of that whole process while I was writing that book is I was really trying to find replacements, for things
Hmm.
that I couldn't eat anymore, like barbecue sauce. It's like, well, I can't have barbecue sauce because that's sugar. So, I mean, I've been working, at my company as a food technologist, and, I made barbecue sauce using our sweetening systems. And then I made ketchup, and I made Thai sweet chili sauce and teriyaki sauce. So I started making all of the things that I couldn't have. And then, of course, I had friends and family suggest, why aren't you selling this to people? So I got it out to people. They're like, this is amazing. You need to package it up. So I packaged it up and sort of leveraged the popularity of the book, into getting direct to consumer sales. And so my side hustle kind of took off, and
It is taking off. Well,
it
we
is.
talked off camera a little bit about this, a nice little, intro package that you send the podcast host that is incredibly generous. And wow. I mean, I want you to hit the pause button, get in your car. Well, I'm sorry, better hop on your bike and go to Whole
Yeah.
Foods and pick this up. It's called Gone Keto. Look for those brands. And what other stores is it available in? As I'm doing this personal public service announcement.
Well, thank you. Mostly, I mean, mostly we do direct consumer, online. So if they just go to Guy Gone Keto, or they go on Amazon, GNC, I mean, I think that we're still trying to work out some of the bugs, to make the product perfect. So I think that the product is actually really good. Everybody tells me how excellent it is, followed by how crappy the packaging is. So,
I thought just the exact opposite, but I'm an old guy that didn't have good taste, but I thought the packaging was really good.
well, so part of the problem with the packaging, right, is that it's a stand cap pouch.
Yeah.
So in order to get the top off, you have to like pull the seal ring. And a lot of people may be confused by the principles of displacement. So they squeeze the bag while
And
they
other
pull.
complicated issues.
It is complicated, and and I didn't foresee it to be so complicated, but I've had so many people tell me, we love the product, we didn't love the fact that it ended up all over our shirt. And I'm like, I get it. So we did develop two more SKUs. So I've got a spicy garlic ketchup and a nuclear spicy barbecue sauce. And we completely revamped all the packaging, and we're going into a recyclable, heat-resistant PET bottle. So we'll still be able to ship. They won't break. You can recycle it. You can reuse it. You can do whatever you want. Plant flowers in it if you want.
All right.
So that new packaging will be out in the next couple months. We'll do a big, huge promotion, get everybody acquainted with it, and
And you're going to
yeah,
send me a new package that I can actually open this time, or so? No, I'm just kidding.
of course.
We
Well,
had no problem.
we want everybody to review it, because I would love to get people's opinions on the spicy garlic ketchup, because it's really, from my perspective, really solid.
Hmm.
And then the barbecue sauce, like, I like spicy food, but that barbecue sauce was just right on the edge. I was like, oh man, I don't know. It's like, but people have tried it. We've had a focus group, everybody tried it, and I would say 90% of the people thought it was spot on. The other 10% just,
We're
were
over in
like,
the corner crying.
they're huddled in the fetal position. My
That's
mouth is
exactly right. That's
burning.
exactly right.
Um, so, I mean, I think we nailed it. And so that's the one I want to get out, because I have, get into people's hands, because I have a feeling that once they try it, I can really get some cool opinions on it.
Absolutely. Yeah. That does sound like a viral type product that you could launch on the market.
Either way, somebody's gonna be like, "This is the best stuff I've ever had," or "This stuff burned my face off."
A quick side note: I saw a little meme on Facebook the other day that it was a little like chalkboard in front of a coffee shop that said, "Come on in and please try the worst coffee one person on Yelp ever had." And I thought, what an interesting advertising
I
approach. Is that
like that.
yours is going to be come try our barbecue sauce. One person is still crying or something like that on Yelp.
God, we'll leverage it.
And leverage it for whatever you can. Yeah, that's right. All publicity is good publicity. But I
Yep.
wanted to touch on something that you
Mhm.
said just a minute ago. You brought up kind of the term you felt like an imposter,
Mhm.
But so I like I told you off air that I was listening to another podcast that you had done, and you
Mhm.
you kind of expounded a little bit like on the idea of imposter syndrome. But
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of, in a unique kind of juxtaposition, I wanted to put those two things together. So you said when I'm sitting there, I'm talking to these people about health food, and
Yeah.
I'm not even living a healthy lifestyle. But
Mhm.
then in the whole idea of, that you want to feel like, if you're not living in kind of constant tension of
Mhm.
imposter syndrome,
Mhm.
then you're probably not challenging yourself enough, or you're probably not doing enough to
100%.
kind of get out of the comfort zone type thing. But I don't want to
Mhm.
put words in your mouth. You're the author. Just touch on those two things. Just maybe draw them together a little bit.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I live through or live by is I want to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so I think it's important to constantly take yourself out of your comfort zone. And I would also say that, yeah, if you don't feel like an imposter, like most of the time, then you're not reaching high enough. Because that's, like when I first started getting, working and developing career, um, the big phrase was fake it until you make it.
Sure.
And I just think that that's important. I mean, some people might think that's, controversial. I don't really feel that. I really feel like human beings, if they put their mind to something, that we can all achieve absolute amazing things. Um, but we're all beginners. We all start somewhere. And even like when, we're just beginning to walk, we fake it till we make it. And the next thing you know, we've gone from crawling to walking, walking
Yeah.
to running.
Yeah.
So I think that, if you're not feeling like an imposter sometimes, maybe re-examine your game and level it up, because if you're pushing the edge of what you're capable of now, um, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel like an
Sure.
imposter, but you're going to master it. And then you can take yourself to the next level and the next level. So, there's still not a day goes by for me where I don't feel, like a little bit of an imposter. And, I lean into that because it means that I'm pushing the edge.
It's a little bit like almost the present that performers get. Like I get butterflies in my stomach virtually every time I go. And was it? I can't remember if it was Michael Jordan or maybe
Mm.
Kobe. One of those guys
Hmm.
said, "If the day that I don't have butterflies anymore when I walk out on the court is the day I'm going to quit."
Yeah.
That whole idea of just the healthy tension or healthy nervousness that kind of
Hmm.
raises your game to that higher level. And I
Hmm.
love the way that you kind of frame that about, put yourself in a position that you have to be stretched. You
Oh,
have to be challenged,
100%.
otherwise
Yeah.
you're going to stagnate.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that we touched on that, because I mean that was such a, a kind of a crucial point that, in your other interview, that I thought was so important to kind of expound on. But I think it's a great segue into this kind of one of the final segments of our chat here, is the whole idea of our rising tide startup school.
Hmm.
So at the very end, we just I really want to just step aside and just give you the opportunity to, kind of put on your professor hat and really speak to those that are listening that are, maybe they're trapped in the cube and they've got a great idea
Hmm.
and they're trying to,
Hmm.
how do I scale the wall and get out and kind of start something. But what are two or three just really foundational steps that you think everyone, regardless of what you start,
Hmm.
what are two or three foundational steps that you really have to kind of put in place, to really increase the likelihood of success when you're starting up a new venture?
I would say first off is have a plan. Um, I mean, having a plan is critical, because that's going to be your map. That's going to be, that's going to be how you find your way, your path to success, is by having a plan and how you're going to get there. And within that plan, have firm dates. Like, I will accomplish this by this date. I would say that is the number one, most important thing, in a startup. I would also say number two is be prepared to pivot, because
Hmm.
not all your ideas are going to be great. Some of them are going to be pretty crappy. And I would say that 90% of my ideas have been crappy. But I have had the ability to own it and say, this isn't a great idea. This isn't the direction I need to be going. And then pivoting into other space that, that does make sense. I think that getting too attached to your idea, or getting too attached to maybe some of the details behind your idea, bad idea. So I would, have a plan, be willing to pivot. And then it's also really about determination. It's determination, self-discipline, uh, and resilience.
Mm.
Keep yourself resilient. Um, and I know this is more than two, but I have to add a fourth one too, and that is self-care.
Yeah.
Because you can grind and grind and grind and grind, and you can, start being really successful, but then it's not going to mean anything if you are broken.
Mm.
And making sure that you keep your oxygen mask on, so you can be of service to others. That's the way that you're going to have continuing long-term success. So I every day do something to take care of myself. I get up in the morning, I exercise, I journal, I practice meditation, yoga. I do things for myself, that keep me grounded.
Right. So you can do things for others. I mean, that's
100%.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because that's like you can't. Yeah, I mean, when you get on a plane, and they're like, "Hey, put your oxygen mask on first." I mean, that I live by that. It's
Hmm.
like if you are not taking care of yourself, then you're not going to be of service to others, and that's what we're all here for. Really, is to serve others. Even our ideas, that we come up with as startups, they're it's to is to create a solution, and it's to be of service to people. I don't think that all entrepreneurs that are just like, I'm going to go make a bunch of money. I think that's a bad way to start. I think I'm going to provide a service that makes people's lives better. And I think that, you know, taking care of yourself, and recognizing, service to others is really key.
And was it Einstein that said, don't strive to be a person of success, be a person of value, or something to to that effect, and the success will follow.
Oh,
On the end
100%.
of that. So as a quick recap, I mean, I love these ideas. I mean, really have a good plan that's kind of your your roadmap or your true north. And
Hmm.
the second one I wrote down is be okay with pivot. With
Hmm.
pivots because they invariably will come. But the third
Hmm.
was just rugged determination, discipline, like resilience. And the fourth is really self care. I mean, this idea
Yep.
that, the first three don't really matter if you're not going to be around to kind of see these through.
Yeah.
But I wanted to touch on point number two just for a second. So
Hmm.
you got vast experience, even genetically, you've got vast entrepreneurial experience. But
Hmm.
so tell me about pivots. So how do you know when it's the right time to pivot versus I'm just it's another shiny object I'm chasing squirrels and that type of thing, because it seems like almost a really dangerous intersection that it's kind of like the old adage, the guy quit digging in the mine a
Hmm.
foot before he hit gold, that
Right.
type of thing. So
Yeah.
what is kind of your compass for deciding, or what's the metric, or the idea that between deciding when it's time to pivot and when it's not?
Well, I would say that there's a difference between pivoting and pulling the ripcord.
For
So,
sure.
like, pulling the ripcord is like, I'm out of here, this isn't working. Pivoting is having your same idea, your same concept, but pivoting in a bit of a different direction. So, for instance, when we got into the retail space, like I really felt like retail was where we would need to be. Like, we want to be on every store shelf. And there was a lot of things that I didn't know about, selling a product into brick and mortar at that
Hmm.
time. Like, one of them is dealing with brokers. So
Yeah.
your brokers are the ones that go into the stores and sell your product, and then convince distributors, to actually take your product to deliver to stores. So by the time you pay brokers and by the time you pay the distributors, if you don't have big margins on your product, then you're going to end up losing money, because those distributors, it's like organized crime. Like, they've got a fee for
They
everything,
control the shelf space. That's
Oh
exactly,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
for
like
sure.
you're going to pay for slotting fees, you're going to pay, off invoice marketing expenses, and you might submit an invoice for, $20,000 and you get a check back for 1,500, and then you got to go back and fight for every bit of it. So, I didn't know that going into it. And so that was like really, that was an opportunity for me to take a look at what I was doing, and why, and then also that, hey, we're not going to make our money off retail, but what we're going to do is we're going to use retail to build consumer brand equity, because those people that are food technologists and company owners and food manufacturers, they shop stores just like anybody else.
Hmm.
So it's a great way to get in front of those people. And that's where, that's where I had to pivot from, well, does it make sense for us to have retail as a profit center, or do we use retail as a way to connect and then be able to parlay that consumer brand equity into an ingredient company? Because ingredient is where you're going to make all of your money. Because if you do one transaction, and you're making $8 on it, that's one thing. But if you do another transaction and you're making $80,000 on it, it takes the same amount of time for each transaction.
Right.
So that's like, did we pull the ripcord? Nope, we're still in stores, we're still doing direct to consumer, but we pivoted way more into ingredient sales, because we saw that's where our greatest opportunity was to make more money, to make bigger margins, and also have a greater impact on, on the world.
Yeah. I love the way you kind of framed that. The idea that, kind of let market forces determine, what the next step is, and kind of let,
Sure.
your research and testing and, feedback and all these things that the kind of the feedback metric mechanism that is kind of dictating, what you're doing in the next
Mhm.
phase or whatever. But is there anything that we really haven't touched on? Is there anything you want to close us up with right now? And then I want to make sure that people know exactly where to find, even the various things we've discussed, on the interview today.
Um, I'd like to add that, for your listeners, your viewers, that are, considering or in the midst of a startup, um, I love those people. I love startups, and it's interesting. I run into a lot of CEOs that are like, oh, "I hate the startup world. It's so unsure," and I'm like, "That's crazy. That's why I shouldn't be a CEO. Actually, I should just continue being an entrepreneur, because I love startups. I love startups, the excitement of them when people are in those seminal stages of building a company. That's when it's got its most aliveness,
Oh,
and
for
that's
sure.
when everybody's just on board, and it's more than a business, it's a cause. And so I would have to say to all of your listeners that are in startups or thinking about startups, that it's like, I admire you, I respect you, and just keep at it. Just, don't give up, pivot if you have to, but it takes a lot of courage to start your own business. And yeah, and I admire
Sounds like to me that your next venture needs to be like mentoring startups.
that. If I had time. I love working with startups, because I do a lot of like consulting, when people are looking for a particular type of sweetener. And my favorites are when somebody's in a startup stage that's just starting to crack over like $1 million or something. And, they're like, "Hey, we're thinking of expanding our SKUs and stuff like that." And I love taking those calls. It's exciting
What
stuff.
a great time. Well, Tom, where's the best place to find you online?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So Thom, Thom, last name's King, King. Find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm probably most responsive. Also, you can find me on Gone Keto. Like Gone Keto. I'm on Instagram. I'm on all of the social medias. And out of those, I monitor them quite a bit. So yeah, if you hit me up on direct message, I will certainly get back to you.
Well, I'd say I've really enjoyed our chat today and just hearing kind of the backstory behind Gone Keto and what
Oh,
this
well, thank
magic
you.
package that appeared on my front porch that day. But Tom, I just really appreciate you taking the time, and I know
Oh,
you got a very busy schedule, and in the midst of all the things surrounding kind of COVID-19 and the coronavirus that you're probably dealing with at an extra high level right now. But
it's a
just
lot.
thank you again for coming on the show and just helping all boats rise in a rising tide. Tom,
Oh,
have a great day.
likewise, you too. Thanks, Kevin.